can't tell you how many of our guys have sort of come into themselves in a way that makes them feel like, oh, this is a whole different kind of way of living. This isn't
Mhm.
just about sex and relationships. My whole life is better. And I think the number one thing that we hear, particularly from men in their 50s and 60s, we work with men all across the age spectrum, but the number one thing we hear from them is, I wish I'd done this sooner.
I'm Rachel, and you're listening to the Owning Your Sexual Self podcast. Hey everyone, I have another guest on the show today. I hope you're excited as I am. I have Melanie Curtin on the podcast with us today. She's also a sex and relationship coach, but she specifically works with men. And I'm really excited to be able to do this episode today as my client intake has really been increasing. I'm finding myself working more with men individually as well as couples in male-female couples. And so I'm really excited. So Melanie, let me read you her bio. Melanie is a sex researcher and a men's coach with a master's in communication from Stanford University. She is a columnist at Inc. magazine and has been published or seen on Today, Huffington Post, Forbes, Business Insider, The New York Observer, and more. Ooh, I like it. And she's been coaching men for over 6 years and specializes in bringing a woman's perspective to men so that they can connect and succeed with women in a more fun, inviting, and meaningful ways that lead to more fulfilling sex lives and relationships. So I'm excited to have her on. We're talking all things like how women can help men open up sexually. What do men see as their primary dating problems versus what are women's primary dating and relationship problems? How do certain men succeed in dating while others fail? So I'm excited to really just help this conversation to help our male listeners and then also for our female listeners. Maybe this is something that you want to send to a man in your life to just help them understand, as I said, the women's perspective a little bit more. So without further ado, let's dive into this episode. Let's have Melanie join us now, shall we? All right. Welcome, Melanie, all the way from LA. It's so good to have you on the show today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yes, you could definitely tell we're in different climates. You're in a nice little cute tank top, and I'm over here in leggings and sweatpants and fuzzy socks. So
Yes, September is still very warm in California.
yes, I actually caved and turned on my space here in my office today. I can't believe I'm admitting that, but and it's supposed to be in like the 80s here next week. So Michigan is so odd. So we are talking all things sex, but with a primary focus on men's work, which I'm really excited about. I've had a few other sex coaches on the show that primarily work with men, and I love having these conversations as we were chatting. You know, I know the show is primarily female listeners, and I know a lot of times when I have episodes like this, my females share them with their male partnerships or they listen to them together. So I'm really pumped to get into this with you today. And I always love to hear other people's stories of how, you know, I don't think you were in preschool and was like, I'm going to talk about sex when I grow up, right? Like, that's kind of the joke that I always make. So how did you fall into this path?
That's a great question. You're right. I think I wanted to be a simultaneous interpreter at the UN, actually. When I was in middle school, that was my dream. Um, I actually got my start in New York City. I helped to co-found a startup nonprofit to stop sexual abuse in the Orthodox Jewish community, which is very, very niche.
Wow.
But in insular communities, there tends to be a lot of sexual abuse. That's true across the world in all cultures. And to make a long story short, I sort of realized that we're not going to get to where we need to go without establishing a safe sexual culture overall. So we need to be open about sex and we need to be talking about it. It needs to be okay, because when we're okay with it, then our kids pick up the fact that it's okay. It's okay for them to talk about it. It's okay for them to share. When we're tight or we're contracted or we're weird about it, that's what they pick up.
Mm.
And so they're less likely to tell us when something's wrong. They're less likely to tell us when something feels icky or not good. Or so I think one of the takeaways that I had from that experience was actually how resilient people are. I worked with primarily boys and men, actually, in the yeshivas in the Jewish schools. And yeah, one of my takeaways was I'm a big advocate of sexual abuse survivors because it's such a prevalent thing that happens and we don't talk about it enough and we don't normalize it. Like millions and millions and millions of people have this experience. So it's something that I'm pretty passionate about. I would say probably 25 to 30% of my clients are survivors. And I'm someone that a lot of people tell. So that's a big part of my background. But I did transition kind of into the more proactive space. So education, edutainment. I have my own podcast. And I'm passionate about working with men, primarily men who have sex with women, which is a term that we use. You probably use it as well because it's a bit more inclusive. So just to bring listeners in, instead of saying straight men, I work with men who have sex with women. They might have sex with other people too. And that's great. But I do work with that population. And I also work with couples.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working more with couples as I go along. So yeah, so I guess I sort of fell into it in that way, and transitioned to a sort of boutique dating coaching company for a while, and then struck out on my own. And now I primarily co-coach alongside a male friend of mine. So we have a program for men that we're both involved with, which I think is really great because we can both hold space for our men, from sort of a woman's point of view and a man's point of view who is in partnership. And he's married with a kid, so he can also speak to all the dynamics around parenting and keeping, the passion there and all of those things.
Yeah.
Well, that's my answer.
Yeah, we have a similar background in that. I also used to work, my background was in sexual assault and survival too, and then primarily with women. And so I feel like that's how I fell into then my primary work being with women, was from that space. So yeah, that's so I love hearing people's stories because a lot of times we do have those commonalities. So yeah, so let's dive into this. So working primarily with men who have sex with women, you hear the problems that they have, right? Like people are coming to you because they're wanting to fix some sort of challenge that they're having. So what would you say are some of the differences or similarities that you see amongst relationships that men are having versus what women are having?
That's a great question. So I work with men who have sex with women, and I would say at this point, probably half of our clients are married or in long-term partnerships, and half are single.
Mm-hmm.
And those two populations have different problems, but sometimes overlapping.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna talk briefly about a core concept that I have around the heart-cock matrix.
Yeah.
So if you think of back in school, you think of a graph. So we've got our x-axis and our y-axis. The x-axis is the flat axis for those that don't remember, and the y-axis is the up and down one. If you think of the x-axis as like the heart-based axis and the y-axis as the cock axis, these are two primary fundamental energies that we all have. And I'm going to use the word cock on purpose because it's kind of edgy. It sometimes makes people uncomfortable, and that is part of that energy. So if you think of cock energy as driving things forward, claiming power, intention, purpose, drive, that sort of, you could say that's sort of like yang energy and yin yang. And then heart energy is more connection based, heart based, love, expression, holding space, gentleness, right? All of that.
Mm-hmm.
What I find is that all men fall somewhere on this graph, right? And so do all women, but I'm going to talk about men today.
Mm-hmm.
So all of us have both of these energies. I would like to emphasize that. But what I see a lot in my practice is that men fall somewhere on this scale. And a lot of times the goal, which we'll get to, is the upper right quadrant. But what happens is a lot of times a man is out of balance in some way. So I'll start briefly with a man who has lots of cock energy and not very much heart energy, right? He's going to be on the top left. Those are going to be rapey guys. They don't care about connection. They just want to take what they want. We don't want that, obviously. But if you move over a little bit, you're going to get to like the fuck boys. Like they might be fun for women to hook up with, but they're not going to commit to those guys. And if you move over a little bit, you're going to get your spiritual fuck boys who have all the right language and know all the things to say and are really present when they're with you, but then they totally drop you when they're not there. And then we'll get to the top right later. So that's kind of like what happens when you don't have as much developed connection energy, but you have developed cock energy. You have that ability to claim and to drive and to, push her up against a wall, and like that kind of fire, that kind of desire and fire and drive is attractive. We do want some of that, but we want it balanced with heart. So then if you go down, and I work with men on in both of these sets of attributes. And I think that sometimes I'm looking for a better term than fuckboy, because I do work with men in this category. I work with fewer in this category than I do with where we're about to go. But just to complete this, what I find with these men is that they're very guarded. Their heart is guarded. And so they're good at attracting women. They're good at generating polarity. They're good at bringing women in, but then they can't sustain relationships. It's really hard for them to sustain relationships beyond about 3 months because that bond, it's the woman usually can't feel his heart. She can't feel the connection or, some version of that. So I've worked with a lot of men in this category that are like, okay, now I'm kind of worried. Like now I'm in my mid-30s and I haven't had a serious relationship and I do want that in my life. What's wrong? How do I do this better? And I'll get to kind of their path. So then if you go down to the bottom right, this is where a lot of my clients are. Probably 70 to 80% of my clients are here. So these men have a lot of developed heart energy and not as much cock energy. And so these are nice guys, quote unquote, nice guys. Like a lot of these guys have people pleasing tendencies. They're really good guys. If they're single, sometimes they're like, all their friends are like, oh, I don't know why you're not in a relationship. You're such a nice guy. And on dates, often they'll get friend zoned. So there's connection. They don't have a problem with connection, but the passion, the drive, the spark, the chemistry, that those are the words like, I want that spark, that chemistry. And if they're in relationships, what you'll hear a lot, and I have some quotes from my sex research we can get to, but what women will say is, I need dominance. I want, they don't say it exactly like this, but it's like, I want more of you. I want your fire. I want that part of you. I want raw energy, right? I want to be fucked sometimes. I don't just want to make love. And that language is even reflected in how these men talk about sexuality. So I've done a lot of qualitative interviews in addition to some of my more quantitative research. And the way that this group of men talks about it is they say, when my wife and I are intimate. So when we get physical, whereas the other men will say, when we have sex. So the actual language is often reflected in how comfortable you are around sexuality, which I'm sure you're totally aware of. You do
everything you're saying so far. I'm like, yes. Like I'm loving this so far. So I used
to joke that I can tell how much a man is fucking by whether he can say the word fuck. Like if you're comfortable saying the word, you're probably having more sex. If you're comfortable saying the word sex, you're probably having more sex. So yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that these archetypes aren't just single men. These are men in relationship as well. And so this group, the nice guy group, basically what we do in our program is we help men come up into the top right quadrant. So if they're more on the nice guy, we're increasing their cock energy. We're working with them around things like sexual shame to help them claim their power more. So really the spiritual path for these guys, the nice guys, is to claim their power, to own their power. And the spiritual path for the men in the top left is to open their heart. So for a lot of these men, all of these men have backgrounds of childhood neglect, and or bullying. There are reasons why they are guarded, or there are reasons why they haven't stepped into their power. And those are legitimate reasons. So that's one of the things we talk about a lot, is just there's a reason that you are this way. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're just going to add more energy to the system and shift and transform some things and bring you up into that top right quadrant. And I've seen pretty amazing transformations. I think one of the best ones lately is we have a married guy who came to us probably at the beginning of the summer. And it's very gratifying working with men and witnessing transformation across the board. But I think especially for the men that are in relationship, it's like, oh, wow, they have a practice partner right there. So men who are dating, they have to wait for practice partners to come in. But this one man joined in large part because of these kinds of comments from his wife, right? His wife was like, I need more from you. I want more in the bedroom. And he was kind of like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to tell you, right? Like, I'm reading the books and I'm doing the things. And so I just sort of want to emphasize that it's not just about technique when we're talking about sex. Like, the cravings that women have aren't just about the technique, although technique is important and we can talk about that. But it was like, no, I want that power. I want to feel your power. Yeah. And you feel a man's power if he's not comfortable with his own power. If he doesn't want to go there, he can't go there with her. So anyway, so we worked with this guy for 4 months, and the other day his wife said, I love the way you fuck me now. Aww. And I was like, oh my God, it's so romantic. Yeah. Most people, but for me, I was like, that's like the best thing that I've heard all day. Yeah. And it's a good, and sort of, it doesn't have to take a long time either. It can, depending on where someone's coming from. But I've seen a lot of big transformation in our men quickly, and then also over time, which I'm pretty sure is probably true in your line of work as well. I think, there's the last thing I would say about this is there's a certain passivity, there's a certain passive quality to this. I'm doing a little thing with if it's audio only, you can't hear, but this genre of men that we're talking about, right? The nice guy archetype. There's a certain passivity that I've seen a lot where they're waiting for permission from their woman or from life or from their job. They're kind of hanging back. They're afraid to get it wrong. There's a lot of holding back and hanging back. And I don't know if you've ever played video games, but sometimes some of the men I worked with have reminded me of when you have an avatar in a video game, it's just standing there until you do something with the remote. It's just standing there. And sometimes I've gotten the feeling that when some men have come to us, they've just been sort of standing there for a while in their lives, especially around sex and relationships. And as we work together, they start to move, they start to take action, they start to actually be engaged in the world, and they get great feedback. So this week alone, I think three of our men were approached by women. So like women texted them, were like, hey, I'm interested. Like, hey, I want to go out. And this is new for them. Like, that has not happened before. I think it's not just it's about how they're showing up, how they are showing up that is attracting that. It's magnetic, right? It's a certain magnetism that comes with it. So I just threw a lot at you. I'll pause and let's get reflections on that.
Yeah. So normally, so when you're describing this, the heart cock access, like when you're describing it, what comes up for me is like masculine, feminine, right? And like the flow of the two. And it does sound very similar, but so many people kind of get caught up in that language, masculine, feminine. So I really appreciate just the way that you describe that and the different quadrants and whatnot. And again, yeah, everything that you were saying, I'm like, yes, I have men that I work with in the nice guy area, and it's like helping them develop that confidence, and like, and a lot of it is like the sex education piece of it. And to no fault of men, I say this all the time, it's like, it's to no fault of you that porn was probably your number one access to sex, right? And we know now that porn is not real, and so it's like unlearning and relearning things in terms of sexuality. But then, yeah, the fuck boy, I really feel you can't change the word fuckboy because it is relatable. Like, people understand the term fuckboy, right? So yeah, I
feel protective though, because I feel protective because I work with men in that general area, and I can't find another word, because I wouldn't call them fuckboys, but I don't have the better word for them, but I care about them. So
Yes.
it's a little painful. I'm like, I want something else, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah. It's like you're really reflecting what's known as fuckboy energy. Like that's maybe how I would word it. But yeah, but that, I mean, that's true. Yeah, very closed off, like not relationship based. And yeah, so what would you say, you know, in working with kind of all of these different areas and groups of and types of men, what would you say, like, what is the certain thing that makes some men better at dating than others?
Interesting. Better at dating. So that's interesting because yeah, better at dating is not the same as better at
Mhm.
relationship.
Mhm.
I think a lot of it does have to do with what we're talking about. Like
Yeah.
if you've got that cock energy and really underneath it, it's a lot of it is about how much shame are you holding around sex and
Mhm.
sexuality. If you're
Mhm.
holding a lot of shame, you're going to be more in the nice guy category. Like that part of me is not acceptable. I would say the biggest fear for the nice guy is making a woman uncomfortable, being perceived as creepy or a pervert. They are terrified of coming off as creepy or making a woman uncomfortable, including their wife. Like
Mhm.
their worst nightmare is that they cross a line. They
Mhm.
don't want to cross a line or a boundary. That is laudable, right? That is like, let's applaud them for that desire.
Mhm.
And it's not only that, right? They think it's only like, I don't want to make someone uncomfortable. But underneath that is, I am ashamed of my sexuality. I'm afraid that who I am will hurt people. That
Mhm.
if I kind of unleash my power, I'll hurt people.
Mhm.
Or, there's a lot of sort of beliefs, and a lot of it has to do with that shame.
Mhm.
Versus, yeah, I like to fuck women. I love women. I like having sex. I'm excited about it. Like there's a more of a shameless quality around there and there's something that we want there. Like there's
Mhm.
something like that it's sort of like money. Money can be used for ill or it can be used for good.
Yeah.
Sexual authority can be used for good or ill. So when it's used for good, it's like, yeah, I love this. I love this part of me. I love this part of you. I'm into it. Like, let's do this. If you're down, great.
Mhm.
There's sort of a good shameless quality that's there. And I think that makes a man good at dating because when you're not afraid of your own sexual power, you naturally flirt, right? You have a natural ease around that part of dating. And that's part of what makes dating fun and exciting. And
Mhm.
I think that the nice guys are obsessed with being polite and making sure that they're not being offensive. And so sometimes it ends up beige or bland. Like you can't feel the fire, the essence, the passion that we're talking about, the spark. So I
Mhm.
think that underneath it all, it's really about overcoming sexual shame. If you overcome your sexual shame, like a lot of my guys are really concerned about like, oh my God, how do I flirt? Like, I don't know how to flirt. It's like, it's not something that you learn how to do. It's that
Mhm.
you handle the sexual shame part and then it just happens. Like
Mhm.
when you're around someone you're attracted to, you say something. Like
Mhm.
if you're owning your attraction and you're saying something, that's flirting. Like you're doing it. You don't have to, it doesn't need to be fancy. You just need to be feeling the feelings in your body and
Mhm.
then connecting. And I think that's something that's been kind of revelatory for a lot of my men because they're like, I don't understand how men do this. Why are some men good at it and some men aren't? And it's like, it's a natural part of our humanity. It's a
Mhm.
natural part of who we are. It's more uncovering the blocks to it, not figuring something out.
Mhm. Yeah, that natural form of mating, right? Mating as mammals. And I also want to just point out too, like men that decide to do this work, I mean, like huge applause for them, right? Because so many men will go through life and not do any sort of men's work, and let alone any sort of men's work related to their sexuality, because there is such shame and stigma around that, right? Like men are conditioned that they're just supposed to know what to do, right? Penis in vagina, that's it, right? That the magic happens, the reaction happens, and then they probably get into partnership and maybe partnership with a woman that knows her sexuality and understands her sexuality, and then they're like mind fucked, like, wait, what do you mean, so I just wanted to mention that it's like there's no shame in doing this work and to seek out this work. And it's I have so much respect for the men that do make their way to people like us, like, to want to do this work. So,
I agree. I think they're the modern warriors. I
mhm.
really do. I think this is this is the work that humanity needs. This is the cutting edge consciousness work. And I tell my men that all the time, that you are the modern warriors. And especially for the ones that are single, but even the ones in relationships, like, this is what women really want. What women really want is that top right quadrant. We want the men that are in their power and connected to their heart. And most men aren't. Like, the vast majority of men are out of alignment in one way or the other, because our culture sucks at teaching anyone really how to be a human being. But I think that the patriarchy really just strips the humanity away from men. Like, here's the man box and you got to be in it. And if you're out of it, you suck and you're a pussy. And then we wonder why we have such high rates of depression and anxiety. I can't tell you how many of our guys have sort of come into themselves in a way that makes them feel like, oh, this is a whole different kind of way of living. This isn't just about sex and relationships. My whole life is better. And I think the number one thing that we hear, particularly from men in their 50s and 60s, we work with men all across the age spectrum, but the number one thing we hear from them is, I wish I'd done this sooner. I wish I had done this sooner. I wish I'd done this in my 20s. You know, they sometimes, so we have a range of men, and our program is group based. And so sometimes they'll look at the younger members and say, good for you. Like, I wish I'd done it when I was your age, because my life would have been better and it would have been easier. And I think that's also true of I'm curious to hear from you and your work, but a lot of our men will say things like, I wish I hadn't stayed in that marriage for as long as I did. It was too long. I wasn't happy. I can't tell you how many men we've worked with who've said things like, yeah, I was thinking about killing myself. Like, I was that disconnected and unhappy. And there's something really extra tough about relationship distress, because if you're cohabitating, it's like you're around it all the time. It's where you live. And so there's the frog in boiling water a bit, where it's like, you're unhappy, you're getting more unhappy, you don't realize kind of how unhappy you are, except that you're like really depressed. You're like, I guess there's something wrong. So yeah, I think it's really brave to seek out the work. I also think it's really, really smart. It's the best investment you can make.
It truly is.
But it's also the best investment you can make in your children. If you are someone with a family and you're listening, you know, the men that do the work, that are investing in owning their power, opening their heart, right? Really owning that top quadrant, that you are a transmission to your children. They don't hear what you say. They look at what you're doing. You transmit to them. So we've worked with a lot of men who've said, I'm glad I did this, not just for me, but also for my kids. And I think that's also something to note, is like, it's when we do our work, it ripples into the people that we love pretty immediately. And so it's not just an investment in us, it's an investment in our loved ones as well.
Yeah. And as you said, and society as a whole, right? The more people that do this work. And so what I find, and I'm wondering if you have a suggestion around this, what I find is that, and this is actually what happened in my marriage. So I started doing the work, like doing coaching, exploring sexuality, like all of that, given the work I do, but then also from a personal development space. And what I'll just say real quick is that the sex work is often the piece that is missing for so many people doing personal development. And so anyway, so I had been doing this for quite some years. Yeah. And my husband has previously fallen into that nice guy quadrant. I will say he is moving on up, like as he continues the work, right? That's the goal that you're sharing, getting him up into that higher right. But it was, and so for me doing this work, like sitting down and having that conversation, like as you're saying, like I need more, I want more, like I'm craving, and I use the masculine feminine language here, but it's like, I was craving him to be more in his masculine, craving him to be more in his confidence, like take ownership. But where we were kind of fucking up with that is like, I was a woman so into my masculine. So I felt like, I hate to even like use the word too much, because I coach women around like, you're not too much, but in that aspect, like I was like overtaking that energy. And that was part of my work, like working to be more into my feminine, and not to say that like I have to be in my feminine for him to be able to be in the masculine, but I really truly believe that so when I bring this up to him, that's when he started his coaching journey, working with a men's coach and just exploring more of this, you know, and like cracking himself open essentially. Right. And in doing that, simultaneously that I'm working on my feminine stuff, he's working on more of his masculine stuff. And I believe that it just, in seeing him like elevate in that way, it allowed me to feel more safety to be in my feminine. And that's been such a beautiful thing. And still, I mean, now we're a few years in, it's like, we still butt up against it, right? Like it's a constant work, really, and it's constant progress that you're making. But so my question here is how, if you are a woman and you are craving this from your male partner, how do you even state that in a way that doesn't bring up defensiveness, doesn't shame them, or any other negative emotion like it happens?
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of why episodes like this are valuable, because you can say, hey, I heard this thing today that really touched me, and I would love to listen to it with you and then talk about it. How does that sound?
Yeah.
And then listen to this or something like this, because I do think it's a large concept. There's a lot to it, right?
Yeah.
But I really hear what you're saying. And I think that, if you are a woman and you want to make a request in a feminine way, I like the word crave. Like, I'm craving more of this from you, or whatever it is. Like, I'm craving this. I would love this. I'm looking for this. I'm longing for this. I really find that for myself, because I'm also powerful woman with a strong alpha. I use alpha and omega instead of masculine feminine now in my practice, but I think it's loaded up with fewer things. I have a very strong alpha. I can kick ass and do things. I don't really want to be an alpha with my man. I don't, it's not comfortable for me. I would rather be in omega. And so I love what you're pointing to, because I think the way that we're trained in the West is to communicate in an alpha way. Like, listen, I've thought about it, and what I think we should do is, right? That's not being in omega. That's not me coming to my man in omega. So for me, what I do is I focus on my longing. Where is my longing? What is my longing? And that helps me communicate in a more omega way. Like, I'm noticing I'm longing to feel provided for by you in certain ways. Would you like to hear about what those are? Of course he's going to say yes, right? It's like,
they want to please. The men want to please. Yeah.
Versus like, I feel like you're not doing enough around the house and it's really bothering me. Right? You feel the difference. It's the same thing. It's like, but when you dig under there, like, there's the complaint, right? There's like, I feel like you're not doing enough around the house and I'm starting to build resentment. Absolutely true. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And if you want to elicit a different kind of response, that's not necessarily how you want to say it. But what's underneath that? What's, underneath it? And it's like, oh, I really want to feel, provided for. I want to feel taken care of. I want to feel that in my body, because I want to be soft. I want to have sex with you at night. And right now I'm noticing I don't want to connect with you as much because I'm not feeling held. I'm not feeling provided for. That's really something that I come back to a lot, at least in my own partnership, is the longing to feel provided for.
Yeah.
And so, one thing that I did recently was I made a list of 10 times that I have felt provided for by my partner. And I think that's another kind of pro tip for both sides is, if you're longing for something from your partner, make a list of 10 times you have felt that from them to help give them a guide. Because I think that what I hear a lot from my men, and I'm positive that you hear this from yours too, is I feel like I can never get it right. I feel like I'm never getting it right. I feel like I'm always falling short. I feel like it's never enough. I think a woman's core fear is I'm too much, and a man's core fear is I'm not enough. And so starting from, here are 10 times when I did feel provided for, he's already feels like he's winning. It's like, oh, I can do this. I've done it. I've obviously done it in the past. I can do more of it now. And it's kind of empowering, versus here are 10 times I felt dropped. I'm not saying you don't share your upset or your hurt, but I think it can be centering for both parties to have like that feeling of like, here are times that I did feel provided for, or here are times I felt sexually claimed.
Mm-hmm.
If those are present in your partnership, if a man really is in this quadrant and you've never felt taken, you've never felt that sense of him claiming you, that might not be present. And that's okay too. Again, you come back to the craving and the longing, like, I'm wanting this experience. I'm craving this experience with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, going to come across differently than, I think we should do this thing because I want this. It's not, it doesn't have the same quality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So many good points. And I know we're getting towards the end here, but I would like to ask one more question that is kind of on another track, but I hear a lot from male clients, like they're wanting to get their woman to open up sexually, or they're wanting their woman to have more sex with them. So how would you guide a man into helping that aspect for himself? Because as I always say, I'm like, you're never going to make somebody want to have sex with you, right? Yeah. Like that's not the reality. So what is your take on this?
Do your work. Do your work. If you are a man and you want your woman to have more sex with you, come work with me, work with Rachel, work with someone, because it's a lot of the time, it's about your energy and how you're showing up that is polarizing or not polarizing your woman. I also teach a streaming course called Please Her in Bed, which I created exactly around my sex research, because to your point, men don't have a lot of places to learn about sex other than porn. And it's not just about the technique. It's not just about the technique. So what I always say for men who have sex with women is, if you are a man who has sex with women and you want them to have pleasure, learn about sex from women. If you don't care about them having pleasure, okay. But I can tell you from my sex research that the number one problem for women, the number one sex problem for women is pain. So it's extremely likely that at some point when you've had sex with your woman, she has been in pain. And it's not just intercourse, right? It's also fingering and mouth. And I say that because women's bodies change over the course of the month, and they change over the course of their lives. And according to the research, most women aren't telling you, including your wife, she's not telling you when she's had pain, when she's been in pain, because she wants you to win. She wants you to feel good. She doesn't want to hurt your feelings. We can go into, that's honestly a whole other episode. Yeah. But the takeaway is, if you want to help a woman open up sexually, do your own work first. It's not necessarily the only thing that needs to happen, but it is a big part of it. And I can tell you from a couple of the men that have taken my course, they were like, wow, yeah, she's making different noises. Like, she never made these noises before. Like, these are new noises. This feels like a real moan, not like how it was before. So I do think that there is physicality and technique that makes a difference, and the energetic that we're talking about, right? The heart and the cock. And if you are kind of a nice guy and you're embodying that energy, one thing that I find in terms of initiating sex is in the nice guy archetype, again, it'll be often kind of like waiting for permission, trying to find exactly the right time. There's kind of like a holding back energy, and that's not as attractive for a lot of women versus more claiming. And so learning how to claim, like learning how to do that, learning how to own that part of yourself and remove any blocks to it as part of the work. But I remember one woman said, yeah, the way my husband asks for sex is he kind of pats me on the head. Like, and I was like, what? Like, I don't even understand what that is. But I think that's one example of, like, he doesn't know how else to do it. He's never learned or been taught. So he wants it, but he's kind of coming in like, hey, are you like tapping you on the shoulder, like, hey, are you available? Is this okay? Is this a good time? And I'm not saying you do want to make sure it's a good time. I'm not saying that, but the energy behind it, there's a different way to do that. There's a way to have it feel different than that, to actually come with your whole self, rather than like this sort of like more closed or frightened place where you're sort of afraid of what's going to happen. So that would be my first response is do the work, actually do the work, get engaged, do your own work first. Yeah. And then a lot of what I teach in my streaming course is how to create a safe sexual space for your woman. So I think a lot of the time in the discourse around this topic, if something's not working for a woman, like the way that he fingers her hurts, which is an experience I've had many, 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 many times. the discourse is like, oh, well, women should learn to speak up for themselves, right? They should stand up for themselves and they should say something. Realistically, looking at the research, that's pretty unlikely. There are definitely women who can do it. There are women who do it. A lot of women don't do it. So what I teach instead is how men can create a safe sexual space. And that includes in relationship. This is including long-term committed relationships, not just dating, but like part of what that sounds like is him saying proactively, listen, I always want to know if something's working or not working in our sex. If something hurts, doesn't feel good, I always want to know. And I always want to know when it does work. I love hearing what works. That is creating a space, which is very different from what happens when I ask a lot of men, like, have you talked to your wife about sex? And they're like, oh, yeah. And then I ask them what actually happened. And they say, one time 5 years ago, I said, what do you like? And I'm like, that's not what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about creating a safe sexual space, I'm talking about you leading and inviting her in, which is, I always want to know. I want this to feel good for you. I always want to know what works and what doesn't. And then one of the things I teach in my course is how to ask winning questions, meaning you don't want to ask, is that good?
Yeah.
Because there's so much pressure for her to say yes. Like you don't want to ask binary questions. You want to ask open-ended questions like, how's that pressure? Because you're going to get some information. What you want is guidance.
Yeah.
One of the things I talk about a lot is that women's bodies are like cars. I'm going to set aside Tesla and other EVs for this example. But all cars have the same parts. They all have transmissions. They all have spark plugs. They all have steering wheels. They all have the same parts. But every car is different, right? Every car is a little different. This one pulls to the left. This one has a rear camera. This one doesn't. We kind of understand, like my car, I don't know about you, my fob, you have to use the fob. Otherwise, this whole lock system goes off. Women are like that, right? We all have the same parts and we're all different. So what you're trying to do is learn your car. And I think what a lot of society teaches is either you're a good driver or you're not. Right? As a man, like either you're good at sex or you're not. That is not how it works. You are trying to learn this car. So you creating that space and inviting her into it is part of what creates that safety and part of what will help her have a lot more pleasure. And I'm talking about being married for 20 years too. Like a lot of women have held back and not told the truth because they don't want to offend you. They don't want to hurt your feelings. That is the number one reason when I asked women, like if you know, because I asked people, have you ever broken up with someone over the sex? And I thought more men than women would say yes. 49% of men said yes. I thought like 25% of women would say yes. It turned out to be 61% of women said yes. So the stakes are like higher than we think that they are. And when I asked people, did you talk to your partner about this? Why or why not? Most women said no, or they tried once and it didn't go well. So they need to try again. So again, the man opening up the space and inviting her into it, you're going to get a lot more information because she's pretty reticent to share because she doesn't want to offend you or upset you or hurt your feelings and then have to deal with, frankly, the fallout of that. And you might be a safe man to talk to, but many of us have had bad experiences or are really afraid of that, which there's a whole reason for that. But
yeah. And I think again, it's going back to it's the energy exchange, right? It's not so much about the techniques and yes, maybe you get to a point where you work on exploring kinks and techniques and all of that, but and the work, and I think it sounds like we're similar. It's like you have to get the structure down first, like that energetic structure, the masculine leadership, like like that, or alpha leadership is maybe what you would refer to it as, but that is the piece, that is the missing piece that I think that, like you said, women are craving, men are craving in some aspect, or they don't know that they're yet craving it, right? Until they even learn it's a thing. So yeah, I mean, this conversation, I know this is going to get a lot of downloads. I will be definitely sharing this as a resource for people because thank you, Melanie, like just very well spoken, very just factual, like straight to the point, understandable. This was definitely incredible. So thank you again so much for coming on.
Very flattering. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if people are wanting to reach out to you, work with you, you mentioned some of the programs that you offer, how can people find you?
Yeah, so my podcast is Dear Men, How to Rock Sex, Dating, and Relationships with Women. So you can listen to that, and there's a whole catalog there. And then the streaming course I mentioned is pleaseherinbed.com. which will also take you to my website.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much again. This was incredible.
It's wonderful.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you loved it, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And if you really fucking loved it, make sure to tag me on social media at @TheRachelMain. I'll see you next week.